Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in from today. I want to be the first to welcome you and thank you for joining or attending our the Mahoney Group's Tribal Risk Management and Safety Training Series. My name is Mark Matson. I am the Tribal Practice Leader at the Mahoney Group, and I'm looking forward to spending the next 45 minutes or so discussing our topic today, which is, are you prepared, or is your organization prepared for when the federal ocean inspector walks through the front door? We decided to choose this topic today mainly due to the influx that we've seen in federal ocean inspections over the last 12 to 18 months with our tribal enterprises, or with tribal enterprises and tribal casinos across the country. For those that have experienced this, experienced the inspection, you guys are well aware of what that does to your organization, creates some disruption, and possibly can result in some costly fines for, again, your tribal enterprise. So our goal today and what we're trying to accomplish is, as I mentioned, we want to best prepare you and your organization for when that federal OSHA inspector walks through the front door. We're going to cover a number of items today, from things such as, what are the 5 or 7 most common areas that an inspector is going to look for and walk through. If you have a fine, we're going to cover, what happens when you have findings, and there's a cost to those. What are your rights? How do you work through that process? What are the next steps? And then lastly, again, probably the most important, is how do we proactively attack this, right? How do we create an approach that can eliminate or make that inspection an easier process, for your organization? So the gentleman that's joining us today is a subject matter expert on this, and has some expertise and a lot of knowledge with OSHA inspections, and has gone through a number of those, and probably for some folks that are attending the call today. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Wayne Carroll as our guest presenter today. Wayne comes to us as the founder and president of Ensure Compliance. He has over 32 years of experience in assisting tribal governments, entities, organizations with their risk management, loss control, and safety training needs. Wayne is a board member and the acting vice president of the Arizona chapter of the American Society of Safety Engineers. Wayne is also a authorized OSHA trainer and holds a master's degree in education and training. Before I hand it off to Wayne, we started our training for today. Just a couple of housekeeping items. If there are questions that come about throughout the process, there's a little Q&A button towards the bottom of your screen. Please go ahead and post those there. Wayne's presentation and training are last roughly about 40 minutes of our hour today, and then we'll hold a Q&A session towards the end of the training. So without further ado, I will hand it off to our guest presenter today, Mr. Wayne Carroll.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mark, for that introduction, and for also talking about what we'll be addressing today. It's different. I'm a guy that likes to be there with you all in the field, but I'm excited to have this platform that I can share with you some of the things that are important. Let me pull up my slides real quick. This is a topic that has a lot of meaning and interest because it does impact so many people. A lot of times, you think about it when you hear the word OSHA, it can bring lots of different thoughts to different people's minds, positive and negative in that capacity. But I want to talk about how this relates to you. First, we're going to start what to do when OSHA shows up. This is an area that I've noticed over the years that just some simple guidance can really help and go a long ways when dealing with OSHA. And having dealt with OSHA both on state and federal levels, it's really given us an opportunity for me to really get an insight. And then, how do we be prepared? Mark mentioned that as he opened our call today. So we're going to look at those things. First is, can OSHA inspect my casino? I know when we deal within a sovereign aspect, there's a lot of concern and question. Well, does OSHA have a right? Can they come onto my casino? And any of the area directors for federal OSHA, the one in Arizona is one that I've worked with over the years, but I've also come in contact with area directors in other states as well. And the guiding thumb, the rule of thumb that they've given me is, one, if it is a commercial enterprise that hires non-tribal members and serves the general public, anybody can come into the organization or to their enterprise as a casino, then OSHA can and has a right to come in. So that's sort of the guiding light there as we talk about this today. And OSHA has visited, and we've been able to sort of help with that. And that's also one of the reasons that brought us to this point, because we thought if this information can help one or two, let's help as many people as we can in this process. So some of the things we look at is, why OSHA shows up. Probably the two biggest reasons OSHA is ever going to show up is part of a national emphasis program. And right now there is a regional emphasis program for casinos. And so that's creating a target there, or they're going to have a complaint. That's going to be another one of your biggest reasons. So those are the two main reasons I've seen OSHA show up. Line of sight, that's the idea that if OSHA is driving on a public road and sees something that does not look right, they can call it into play. News reports, if there's a big news report about something that's going to catch OSHA's attention, then they might use that. And then also a reference point of some doctor or police force or firefighter sees something and they can refer to OSHA. But our biggest ones are going to be on the emphasis program, where they're going to kind of just knock on the door because you just got the pick of the draw, or maybe someone complained. The most important thing is that you have a protocol. So ask yourself, does your casino have a protocol for when OSHA shows up? Now, this protocol doesn't have to be some extensive document, one page. Perfect. Just what's going to be done, because the more you can communicate that to other people, the more powerful that will be. Okay. And that, I think some of the people in the front lines, certainly when you look at your security personnel, they need to have this. And anywhere that a casino could come, an OSHA compliance officer could come in and interface with one of our staff, it would be important that they know what the protocol is. Okay. And it's also important who's your point person, so that if OSHA does show up, who's that person that you want the staff to call and bring into the picture? These things are really important because right at the beginning, it gives us the opportunity to team up with OSHA, and so that we can meet them in a way that we can help in this process, we can help guide this process and make it a much more positive process for everyone. So that's some important things to think about. When they show up, let's say your point person is on break. Let's say your point person is at another part of your commercial enterprise. OSHA will wait. It is okay that OSHA is going to sit there and they'll wait. And usually they'll wait up to 45 minutes. So during that time period, you're going to have your personnel as part of that protocol is they're going to find a spot for that OSHA compliance person, and they're going to say, yes, we've got so-and-so coming and they'll be here. And then we can have that moment. I always also recommend that during that time period, just let your people know that if they want to talk about weather, they want to talk about other aspects, that's great. But if the OSHA compliance officer tries to ask some questions that deal with the whole purpose of their visit or otherwise, just tell your team to politely say, oh, no, that's great, but let's wait till so-and-so gets here. They will start out with an opening conference. They'll sit down. They're going to tell you in that opening conference why they are there. I recommend you have all the key personnel present that you want to, and that's a good time to ask any questions to confirm the reason that they're there, because they do have to have a reason, and they do have to be able to show you what that reason is. Now, if it's part of the emphasis program and you got the luck of the draw, there it is. If it's a complaint, they won't tell you who complained, but they will be able to say what was the complaint in reference to. Now, this is the part, once you go through that opening conference, they're going to go now and they're going to walk the casino. All right. And they're going to go and they're going to have access. And I always, when I do this and when I am with OSHA, the times that I do am in the area and I can be the one there to participate, I always tell the OSHA compliance officer, think of me as little brother. I'm going to do whatever you do. And that's what you want to do. You want to do whatever they do. And what I mean with that is if they take a picture of something, you take a picture of it. If they capture something on video, you capture something on video. And there's two reasons for that. One, you're capturing the same thing that they're going to have to go back to when they write their report from, so that we all know what that is. And two, if there's things that we can change that we need to learn from, well, then we have that information ready for us right there. Also, it's important to take notes. Anything that they're mentioning, anything that they say, and sometimes they'll say something and they won't note it down. But if it has pertinence to like maybe a correction that they've mentioned, you go ahead and write it down as well, so that you have both photographic documentation and also you have notes as well of this visit. If they find anything, let's say they're walking through and you've got some extension cord that they're using to vacuum an area of the casino, and that extension cord has some fray or something's wrong with it, you right there in front of them, you pull that extension cord out of surface and you cut it in half so that they know no one's going to use it. Now, be sure you unplug it before you cut it in half. No, that's actually happened in the past. But you want to show them, you're going to show them good faith. You're going to say, hey, here's what I'm here and this is what we're trying to do. And you're going to be that important place there for the corrections. When they're done, you're going to have that closing conference. They might go through some additional notes that you didn't get down because they thought it, but then are telling it to you now in that closing conference. But make sure you have everything ready there that you need to have. And now that, there's going to be the sum of that visit. Okay. As soon as they leave, start working on corrections. Don't wait. Don't wait till we get the final notice, or don't wait till you want to start working on corrections, working on that list, anything that they pointed out, you're going to correct, and then you're going to provide OSHA with that correction. OSHA is going to give you their contact information, that compliance officer. Now, occasionally there'll be two, because a lot of times they might send two compliance officers. One's going to focus on occupational health and safety. The other one's going to focus on the industrial hygiene. The industrial hygiene side deals with chemicals and anything that can deal with illnesses. The occupational side, they deal with more of the injuries, the physicality of things. So you're going to help both of them. You're going to be sending them anything that you do. You're going to get those corrections going right away as you go through. Now, I call their correspondence the love letter. That's my little comment that I make. And a lot of times I'll have someone call me and they'll say, Wayne, OSHA showed up. And they were really nice. They kind of went, they pointed out a few things. I said, oh, have you gotten the love letter yet? They said, love letter? Well, I mean, their correspondence, they're the document that they're going to send you. Oh, well, no. And then maybe a couple of months, I'll get a call. I just got the letter and blah, blah, blah. And they're all upset. Well, because that's going to be the letter that they're going to point out the things that they found, and they'll cite the corresponding issue and the regulation that it applies to, and then they'll apply a fine to it. Every now and then, depending on that, they may put a zero, but hardly ever, especially on the federal level, you can pretty much count on that there's going to be a fine there. And that's where the frustration a lot of times comes in as well. So when you get that, that's your action plan. That's what you know now, what you're going to have to do, the things you're going to need to abate. Chances are you've already took care of some of them. That's going to be great. And so you're going to be able to take that and get those things and move forward and follow through with that. Now, when you get that correspondence, okay, we can contest the citations. And there's two ways. You do it through informal conference and you do it through a formal contest. And I'll kind of go through each one and the pros and cons of each one. I always recommend an informal conference. Even if if for nothing else, you're going to ask for a reduction. We'll talk about that. But I think the informal conference really gives you the opportunity to work with your team so that they understand what took place, and for you to make a good communication to OSHA to show them good faith. We took this seriously. This is important to us. And that helps with further issues because down the road, they could come back out again for something else or for the same emphasis program that's out there. I've known clients to get hit 2 or 3 times over a couple of years. I even had one situation where it was someone that was out in the field and they got hit 3 times in 6 months. So there's no rhyme or reason to that. But you do want to make sure that you're going through that process so that if they do come again, there's that good feeling from what you've been there. Have everyone there in attendance. It's usually a Zoom. It's usually a phone call, not even a Zoom call, but it's usually a phone call that you'll be on when you do this. Or sometimes it can be something where you can show them the documentation. Have complete documentation on everything that you've done. This includes receipts for money you spent to abate the citation, sign-in sheets for your training, policies and procedures, anything relating to the citations, that you're going to have all of that done and all of that ready in that process. Now, I always ask for reduction, and there's been once or twice where there was not complete information when the compliance officer was there. We now have that information. It existed before they came, and in those cases, we will also ask for the removal of a citation because therefore it really wasn't necessary. So all of these things can take place in your informal conference. If you're not happy with what took place in the formal conference, you can contest it in the informal conference. You can contest it to formal contest. Now, here's something that over the years that I've learned that I felt like it's something really important when I teach this to people is you really want to look at the citation because there are situations where you really will want to get an attorney involved. And I know a couple of really, we know a couple of really good OSHA attorneys that this is stuff that they specialize in, and they can help because when you deal with fatalities or willful, very likely you're going to want to have some of that involved. But that's something, a case by case, that you'll deal with as things go on. When we're done, when we've had whether the informal conference, we've gotten the final documentation for any citation removals and or fine reductions, whichever the case might be, whatever's left, we don't ever want to leave anything out there. We want to make sure we bring everything to final resolution. Okay. We want to make sure we pay all the fines. We want to make sure we have all the documents signed and turned in. Don't leave anything hanging out there because it can come back to bite you. And so that's something you want to avoid. All right. So that was sort of how to deal when OSHA shows up. And a lot of stuff there that we have there for you. If you do we're going to have that Q&A at the end for you. So let's save their questions for then. But now let's move into where we're talking about how you can prepare. Okay. Because this is something important. And really, what I like about this idea of preparing, because your focus is just a quality, safe place. And so many of the casino operations and commercial operations that I've had the honor to work with, that is the goal that I find when I'm there working with them. And so with that goal in mind, this will give you just a little of a direction of some of the things that you may run into. Now, there's a big list here. A lot of these lists are things that I'll kind of touch on briefly. I'm going to dive down deeper on a couple of them that I think are really important. But these are some of the areas that in the years that I've worked with OSHA, when they do a visit, that you're going to run into in that situation. Emergency equipment, exit signs, emergency lighting. This is one that most operations that I interact with got a lot of good things going on here. So I won't spend a lot of time here. Emergency escape routes. This is one, though, that I do want to bring up because it's so easy for people to accidentally stack a couple of things in front of one of our escape routes because maybe we don't even use them all the time. It's maybe back towards the end of the casino somewhere. And this is where we have to be constantly vigilant to make sure nothing can be blocked. We also have to make sure that if we're going to designate something an emergency escape route, that it can't be locked, that there's always that ability for the employee to push it out when they go. So these are things that you're going to want to watch for in that situation, that we have an adequate number for the people that we have, clearly identified in all routes. So this is a big area that they focus on. And a lot of times I've seen it where just some things just kind of get in the way. So this is one that I would really make sure you highlight. Hazard communication is another one that's really important to highlight. This is a must-have program. Every entity's got to have a hazard communication program with accessibility to the safety data sheets. So these are things that you're going to look at in that must training, must label. These are all. One of the big ones that I've seen hit several times in several locations are eye wash stations. Any of your janitorial closets have got to have some kind of eye wash feature there for you, for them, and for your staff. And that's really a big one that I've noticed. Or even anywhere that you have situations where you're storing things, make sure you have access to eye wash. That's a big one. Another one that I see a lot when it comes to hazard communication is I'll still see the MSDS, material safety data sheets. It's no longer material. And a lot of times people bought these nice books and they have MSDS on it. I just say take some tape and tape it over the M, because that way you're communicating to OSHA that you know it's changed. So this is another big area that I always try to focus on. Housekeeping, this is big, but we're always working on this one. So just keep in mind that you always want to be working on your housekeeping, because that's an important one with everything that you do. Electrical is another really important one. They're going to look through the panels, the GFCIs, cover plates, overloading circuits, extension cords. All of those are areas that you're going to want to watch in your groups as well. Fire prevention, a lot of people really have a lot of good things in for fire prevention, but this is one that they're going to look at for where your risers inspected. So that's one to make sure you're keeping in mind. Tools and equipment. This is another one I'm going to drop down just a little bit more on, because if you look at the first item that I've listed there, it says machine guarding. Machine guarding is such a top priority for OSHA in any industry. And a lot of times I'll know that there'll be a casino that will have sort of a maintenance room or some kind of area where they've got tools and maybe even a drill press or a saw. All of those equipment, you've got to make sure that you have them guarded with that process, because that's going to be really important for you to know what you've got there in that situation as you go through that. Falls, this is another one, and the big one that I want to focus on here are ladders. OSHA is very big that ladders must have their labels. The ladders themselves must be in good condition, and the labels must be visible and in good condition as well. So those are some things that are really a big high priority for OSHA. I have known them to cite this. And one thing just kind of real quick, it's when it comes to any kind of a citation, the base citation that OSHA quite often goes from is 12,000. So if you have a ladder that doesn't have labels on, it's easily going to be a $12,000 citation to the organization for something like that. Now, I don't see them do this often, but technically they could. Let's say you had 3 ladders without the labels visible. Technically, OSHA could charge you for each one. Every now and then I'll see an OSHA compliance officer do that. So keep that in mind. If you've got 3 ladders that are not in good shape, that could be a $30,000 issue, and we can buy a lot of ladders for $30,000. So those are things I bring that up because I do see OSHA hitting that one quite a bit when they're out there and about. And finally, on the site visit, when they're going through and seeing your site, we have the general duty clause. And the idea that to keep in mind when they talk about this general duty clause, this is part of OSHA's regulations. And it says that the work environment must be free from recognized hazards that are causing or likely to cause death or serious physical harm. I've seen OSHA use this. They may walk through your casino and see something and they can't find regulation to tie to it, but they're still going to cite you for it. A couple of examples during the pandemic, this is what OSHA used for COVID-19. If they were going to cite an organization or if they were going to call out an organization For COVID-19, it was under the general duty clause. Another area that I've seen it used is in workplace violence, because technically there's no workplace violence regulation per se right now. And so that's one of the things that would look at, that we'd want to make sure that we're taking care for that. Okay. Next thing that's really important is our documentation. Documentation. This another huge area that can protect your organization. One of the recent issues that I was a part of, because they had the documentation to explain how their policy worked, it really negated the citation that was there. So that's really important that we have that in that situation. Also, many times after the visit, OSHA will send an email asking for certain documentation from the client. What I always make sure I tell people that is so important. If they ask you for A, B, C, you give them A, B, C. Every now and then someone's tempted, but I want to give them D, E, and F because those are really good. And it's like, yeah, but OSHA didn't ask for D, E, and F. So make sure we stay at A, B, and C. And I'll even say you label, like if they say number 1, I want to see your OSHA logs. Then when you capture that PDF file, you're going to say 0.1 OSHA logs as the name of that PDF. So they can tie it back to what they requested from you. Anything that they request. Now, if they ask you for your hazard communication program, and let's say your hazard communication program is in your overall manual, and part of fall protection is at the bottom of the last page of hazard communication. You want to block that out. You want to only give them the program that they're asking for and nothing less and nothing more. There's just been 1 or 2 times where I've seen it, where they'll see that little paragraph on fall protection and they'll go, wait a minute, I got some questions about that. Well, now because you gave it to them, they have a right to look at it some more. So those are some things you really want to be careful of when you look at those situations and having those things. All of the ones that these topics here, emergency action plan, hazard communication program, fire prevention, workplace violence, SHARPs, that's your needle pokes, bloodborne pathogens. These are all things that I guarantee you at some point OSHA is going to be looking for when they come on site. Many of them, on that compliance officer, when they're looking at that. So, having these documentations already beforehand is really powerful. Now, if you didn't and they want you to put it together, well, then at least make sure we get it put together and get it to them. The injury illness prevention program, that's the overarching document that would collect and contain all of these. I've never seen them ask for the entire injury illness prevention program. Usually they'll just ask for the table of contents in that process. So, but this is your documentation is really huge, and it's really important that we're focusing on that. And then finally, training. Make sure that you have done training. If you look at OSHA's regulations, the way that they address training, there's a few topics. You've got your powered industrial vehicles. If you've got a forklift, that's documented every 3 years. You got to train your staff, and I've seen OSHA cite for that. And then bloodborne pathogens. That's listed in OSHA's regulations that the employees must have it every year. So those two, hazard communication, it's listed as that training is important. The way it's written is that you have to do it when you hire someone new and whenever you significantly change a chemical on your site. Used to be culturally, whenever the compliance officer would come out, they would ask, are you doing your annual hazard communication training? And they were trying to cite for that. They finally were called out on that. And a few years ago, OSHA came out with a big documentation, announcement saying hazard communication is not every year required. It is important that you do it at hire and that kind of stuff. What I do recommend, though, is you look at possibly doing it even internally on your organization on a regular basis. Because if you have a new hire that fell through the cracks, maybe somehow they got hired and you had to get them out in the field right away, out on the floor right away, they skip that training. Well, if you do it every year, you're going to make sure you capture all those trainings. And these are a few trainings that you're going to want to make sure you're risk manager is looking to you got to document that everyone's taken it. One of the situations I went through with a forklift, an unfortunate forklift fatality several years ago, one of the employees had been with the organization for 10 years and had never had missed that 3-year training. Every 3 years they were doing it, but somehow this employee missed and they got dinged for that. So make sure that you're looking at your key employees at these key topics, that they're getting there and that they're making that training, because that's really important that you have that, and then document it. Make sure you have all the signatures, you're keeping them. And even if you do a simple tool, safety talk, you get your group together, you're doing a monthly safety talk, get everyone's signature, all of those things every time you're communicating it, making sure that you have that. All right. Well, that's Mark, the stop with what I have. So let me go ahead and get you back there and we'll see if people have questions.
Sounds good. Well, let me be the first, Wayne, to thank you for taking the time to put the presentation together for us today and for the folks on the call. So thank you for that. We really appreciate it. And that was a lot of information. And I know that our folks that joined will be better prepared now to manage an OSHA visit. Received a couple questions. First one is, can I send OSHA away?
Ooh, technically, if OSHA shows up, you have the right to say, nope, I don't want you here. Now, if you do that, I guarantee you OSHA will go get a warrant. They'll get a federal judge to give them a warrant, and they'll be right back. So you might as well just go ahead and let them in and guide that process.
Perfect. And again, just as a reminder, guys, the Q&A button's down at the bottom if you want to post a question. One of your fellow risk managers, Wayne, just asked for some clarification and understanding between the difference in eyewash bottle stations and plumbed in eyewash stations. He said, as plumbed in eyewash stations are required for corrosives. Just to maybe elaborate on that a little bit more.
Correct. So you do have to, when you get your eyewash, you've got to look at the chemicals that you're being used. Obviously, things like your bleaches and your ammonia that can corrode the membranes. And also, if you have a pool at your casino resort and you got all of those chemicals, those ones have to be something that's plumbed, that you can get that really strong, steady stream. Some of your other cleaning supplies, some of your other stuff, a little bit more less evasive, then your bottles would be adequate for that. So you got to do it based on the chemicals, and your chemical, your safety data sheets often will give you that information. They'll indicate what you need there.
Perfect. And then a secondary comment, basically, I think when you were talking about the citations per ladder, he mentioned each citation can also be multiplied by the number of affected employees.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. They'll evaluate the high risk, number of employees, number of incidents, and that factors in. Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Perfect. I think you handled this one, but we received a question saying, will OSHA ask for specific documentation?
They do. They usually don't do it when they're there on site. They will send you an email to whatever contact person you gave them, and then they give you their laundry list of all the documents that they want. And and that's the one that I just kind of as a review that I mentioned. If they ask for A, B, and C in that email for the documentation, you only give them A, B, and C.
Perfect. Thank you. A couple more here. I'm not sure if I have the full meaning of this, but the question was, so is it mutually exclusive? So we may need to elaborate a little bit more on that. So we can, I see who the question's from, so we can circle directly back with this person if need be.
Okay.
Couple other questions here is, how can I get you out to my casino?
Well, Mark, I'll let you answer that question.
So perfect. Yeah. Thank you, Wayne. We'd love to, provide any assistance. Again, Wayne and his team are available through the Mahoney Group and our risk management department. So Happy to, if you could reach out to myself, and I can release some email addresses here, and I will make sure that Wayne gets in contact with you and is able to assist through the process.
Yeah, no, that's a part I really do enjoy, and we've worked with many that way. So thank you, Mark.
Perfect. Let's see. This is in reference to reducing violation costs. It says first call. How do I navigate the first communication after citations are received?
So excellent question. When you get when you get the love letter, or you get your correspondence from OSHA, they're going to tell you have 15 days for you to respond that you want to do an informal conference. Okay. So with just as long as within that 15 days that you say, hey, you let them know, and they will try to schedule it within that 15 days. All right. That they're going to get back. They're going to try to find a time that you will work for everyone. And then you will get there in that 15 days. When that conference, they're going to go over the citations, and that gives you the opportunity to, one, indicate what you've done to abate it. And that's why if you've got receipts and everything, because those all come into play, those all add up to show that, hey, we spent some money because it was important, and that kind of a thing. And then a lot of them will take that into consideration when they do that. And then once you go through that, then at the end is when I always say, all right, we would like a reduction. I ask for the most. I'll say, hey, we'd like 50% reduction. They'll give 40, 30. They'll kind of come back, but that's just really dependent on whoever the area director is and what they're willing to do. But the more you have in place, the more you have a position to ask for that higher reduction in fine. And there has been one situation with a tribal entity where we were actually able to get the citation removed because we showed that, hey, that really did not pertain, and here's the documentation to show why. So that's also out there too.
Perfect. Received a follow-up on the mutually exclusive, the informal and formal, the informal or formal process.
Perfect. So the informal, if you go the informal process, you can still go the formal. Okay, if you choose to go the formal, you can still go the informal, you can still go the formal. Now, one of the advice that I got from one of the attorneys I work with is they said, if you're going to contest it, if you just know right off, you feel like, okay, this is because of whatever happened or the gravity of what you thought was there. And this usually, if there's a fatality, that's usually one that might, you'd want to get good advice on that. But if you're going to contest it and that's where you need to go, often you may not do the informal. Okay, you're going to go straight to that contestant. Now, I would do that under the attorney's advice, but the reason you're going to do that is if you do the informal, you're giving them all the information that you have. And so you're better off, but if you feel like, nope, the informal is the way we're going to go, then that's the way. But they're not. You can do informal and end up on the formal level.
Perfect. All right. It looks like most of the questions. I'll give it a couple more seconds here and see if anybody has any follow-up questions for Wayne. All righty. Well, again, wanted to thank Wayne Carroll from Assure Compliance for being our guest presenter today. Please be on the lookout for our next topic. We'll be sending out an email here and a post for our next topic of the Mahoney Group's risk management and safety training series. And again, we appreciate everybody's time today, and we hope everybody has a great rest of the week. So take care.
Thank you.